The divorce papers were supposed to arrive next Tuesday. Instead, I found my wife's sister Darla, living in our guest room with her 3 kids and a boyfriend I'd never met, eating cereal from my grandmother's china bowls. "Mornin', Eddie," Darla said, without looking up from her phone. "Hope you don't mind we used the good dishes." The regular ones were dirty. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen, tool belt still around my waist from the morning job, watching this woman who'd never worked a day in her life destroy everything my family held sacred. The boyfriend, some tattooed kid who couldn't be older than 25, nodded at me like we were old drinking buddies. "Where's Marcy?" I asked. "Oh, she's at one of her wellness retreats again. Said she needed to find her center," or whatever. Darla finally looked up, smirking. You know how she gets when she's stressed about money. Money. Right. Because apparently my plumbing business that kept this family fed and housed for 20 years wasn't cutting it anymore. Not since Marcy opened that boutique downtown and started hanging around with the yoga crowd. "How long are you planning to stay?" I kept my voice level. After 2 decades of marriage, I'd learned to pick my battles. "As long as we need to," the boyfriend answered for her. Darla's going through a rough patch with her ex. She needs family support. Family support. From the woman who'd called my daughters, "not really yours anyway," at last Christmas dinner, loud enough for Beck and Sylvia to hear, the woman who'd spent years telling Marcy she could do better than a blue-collar guy like me. "Right," I said. "I'll be in the garage." I needed space to think. The garage had always been my sanctuary. Organized chaos of tools, half-finished projects, and the smell of motor oil and sawdust. I pulled out my phone and called Frank, my oldest friend and the only mechanic in town who'd work on my van without charging me an arm and a leg. "Eddie, how's the family man today?" "Frank, I need a beer and some honest conversation." "You free tonight?" "Always, brother." "Murphy's Tavern at 7? "Perfect." I hung up and stared at the wall where I'd hung pictures of Beck and Sylvia over the years. Graduation photos, soccer games, father-daughter dances. They weren't biologically mine. I'd married Marcy when they were 5 and 7. But I'd been the one to teach them how to drive, helped with homework, walked them through their first heartbreaks. Now Beck was 22, finishing her psychology degree, and Sylvia was 19, studying at the community college. Both smart as whips and twice as tough as their mother ever was. They'd inherited Marcy's looks, but somehow got my work ethic and common sense. The garage door opened, and Sylvia walked in, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing paint-splattered jeans. "Dad, what's with the circus in our kitchen? Your Aunt Darla needed a place to stay, and Mom just decided this without talking to you?" Sylvia had always been the more direct of my daughters. "That's not like her." Actually, it was exactly like her lately. Ever since she'd started spending time with that wellness crowd, Marcy had been making unilateral decisions about everything, from our finances to our social calendar. The boutique was bleeding money, but she kept insisting it was an investment in her authentic self. "Where is Mom anyway?" Sylvia sat on my workbench, something that would have driven Marcy crazy. "She wasn't here when I got home from class." Another retreat. That's the 3rd one this month. Sylvia frowned. "Dad, are you guys okay?" "How do you tell your daughter that you've been sleeping in separate bedrooms for 6 months? That your wife comes home from these retreats smelling like different soap and wearing new lingerie you didn't buy? That you've started checking her phone and found messages that made your stomach turn?" "We're working through some things," I said instead. "Working through things like Darla eating our food and that kid using Dad's bathroom without asking permission." I laughed, despite everything. "You noticed that too? He left the toilet seat up and used your razor. Beck's ready to murder him." "Where is Beck?" "Library, working on her thesis. She said she'd rather sleep in her car than listen to Darla complain about her ex-husband for another minute." Smart girl. I'd raised them right, even if their mother seemed to have forgotten what family loyalty meant. That evening at Murphy's Tavern, Frank was already 3 beers deep when I arrived. The place hadn't changed since we were 25. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same smell of fried food and broken dreams. "So," Frank said, as I slid into the booth across from him, "heard Darla's back in town. News travels fast. She was at the grocery store this morning, telling anyone who'd listen about her temporary living situation, with her saint of a..." brother-in-law, Frank, made air quotes, also mentioned that Marcy's been real supportive during her time of need. Supportive how? Apparently Marcy's been giving her money, quite a bit, from what I heard. My beer arrived and I took a long drink before responding. Money from where? That's what I was wondering. Thought you might know. I didn't know, but I had a sinking feeling I was about to find out. Marcy handled our personal accounts, but I still had access to everything. I'd been avoiding looking too closely at our finances because every time I did, I found more evidence of money going places I didn't recognize. Frank, can I ask you something? Shoot. If your wife was acting strange, staying out late, taking mysterious trips, suddenly generous with money you didn't know you had, what would you do? Frank set down his beer and looked at me seriously. I'd find out what the hell was going on before it was too late to do anything about it. And if what you found out was worse than you expected, then I'd decide whether I was the kind of man who takes it lying down or the kind who fights back. I thought about that conversation all the way home. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Darla and her crew had apparently gone to bed, leaving their dishes in the sink and crumbs all over my grandmother's tablecloth. I climbed the stairs quietly and paused outside Beck's room. Her light was still on, so I knocked softly. "Come in, Dad." She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, laptop open, surrounded by psychology textbooks. Even at 22, she still looked like a little girl who used to fall asleep in my lap during movie nights. "How's the thesis coming?" "Good. I'm writing about family dynamics and psychological manipulation." She looked up at me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think Mom's having an affair?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut, even though I'd been thinking the same thing for months. "What makes you ask that?" "She's different, secretive. She bought new clothes but hides the shopping bags. She's always at the boutique. But when Sylvia and I stopped by last week, it was closed and had been all day." Beck closed her laptop. "Plus, she's been really weird about her phone lately." "Weird how?" "She takes it everywhere, even to the bathroom, and yesterday I saw her delete a text message before reading it, which is just suspicious." My daughter, the psychology major, reading behavioral patterns like a textbook case study. "Beck, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If things get complicated around here, I need you and Sylvia to trust me. Can you do that?" She studied my face for a long moment. "Are you planning something, Dad?" "I'm planning to protect this family. Sometimes that means making hard choices." "What kind of hard choices?" I kissed the top of her head, like I used to when she was little. Kind that make sure the people who matter most come out okay in the end. After Beck went to sleep, I sat in my home office and opened our bank statements for the first time in months. What I found made my hands shake. Marcy had been withdrawing cash regularly, $500 here, $300 there, always just under the amount that would trigger a bank notification. Over the past 6 months, nearly $8,000 had disappeared from our joint account. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the credit card statement I found buried in a stack of boutique paperwork. A card I didn't know existed, in both our names, with a balance of $12,000. Hotels, restaurants, a jewelry store, charges for a weekend in Grand Rapids that coincided with one of Marcy's, quote, wellness retreats. I sat back in my chair and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger yet. That would come later. This was something else. This was the moment when you realize that the person you've loved and trusted for 20 years has been systematically lying to you. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your wife's at the lake house with Tyler. Thought you should know. A friend. Tyler Green." The wellness coach, who'd been hanging around Marcy's boutique, all organic smoothies and fake spirituality. The guy who drove a souped-up Jeep and wore designer workout clothes to the grocery store. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The lake house was 40 minutes away, a property that had been in Marcy's family for generations. We'd spent countless weekends there with the girls when they were younger, teaching them to fish and swim, having barbecues on the dock. Now it was, apparently, serving a different purpose. The drive gave me time to think, to plan, to let the cold feeling in my chest spread through my entire body. By the time I pulled up to the tree line where I could see the house without being seen, I wasn't the same man who'd found Darla in his kitchen that morning. That man had been willing to work things out, to have difficult conversations and make compromises. This man was ready for war. I sat in my van behind the pine trees for 2 hours, watching Tyler's Jeep in the lake house driveway, like a hunter waiting for the perfect shot. The lights were on in the bedroom, my bedroom, where Marcy and I had spent our 10th anniversary just 3 years ago. My phone had been buzzing with text messages, but I ignored them all. Whatever crisis Darla had manufactured at home could wait. This was more important. At 11:30 p.m., the bedroom lights went out. At midnight, Tyler emerged from the front door, stretching like he'd just finished a workout. Even in the darkness, I could see his satisfied smirk. He climbed into his Jeep and drove past my hiding spot without noticing me. I waited another 10 minutes, then followed at a distance until he turned into the driveway of a small cabin on the other side of the lake. So that's where he was staying. Good to know. I drove home with my mind racing. The house was quiet when I got there, but I could see light under Beck's door. I climbed the stairs and knocked softly. Dad? It's almost 1 a.m. I know. Can I come in? She opened the door wearing pajama pants and an old t-shirt from her high school soccer team. Where were you? Thinking. About Mom? I sat down in her desk chair and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. At 22, Beck had grown into a formidable young woman. She had Marcy's beauty, but none of her weakness. She was going to be a hell of a psychologist someday. Beck, I need to tell you something, and I need you to keep it between us for now. She sat on her bed and pulled her knees up to her chest. Okay. Your mother is having an affair. She didn't look surprised. With who? Tyler Green. The wellness coach. The guy with the stupid Jeep who's always posting shirtless photos on Instagram? That's him. Beck was quiet for a moment, processing. How long? I don't know. Months. Maybe longer. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? 20 years ago, I might have confronted Marcy directly, demanded explanations, tried to work things out. But 20 years ago, Marcy wouldn't have stolen money from our joint account to fund her affair. 20 years ago, she wouldn't have brought her sister into our home to provide cover for her activities. I'm going to handle it, I said finally. Handle it how? I don't know yet, but Beck, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens, you and Sylvia are my priority. Not the marriage, not keeping the peace. You two. Dad, you're scaring me a little. Good, because what's coming next isn't going to be pretty. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. I had research to do. Darla was still in my kitchen when I came downstairs, but this time she was alone. The boyfriend and kids were nowhere to be seen. Where's your entourage? I asked. Tommy took the kids to the park. Thought we should have a talk. I poured myself coffee and waited. Darla had never initiated a serious conversation with me in all the years I'd known her. Eddie, I know you're upset about us staying here. Am I? You have every right to be. It's your house. This was new. Darla acknowledging that I had rights in my own home. But I want you to know, Marcy really needed me here right now. She's going through a difficult time. What kind of difficult time? Darla hesitated, and I could see her calculating how much to reveal. She's been questioning things, her choices, her priorities. The boutique isn't doing as well as she hoped. So she's been withdrawing money from our joint account to keep it afloat? Darla's face went pale. You know about that? I know about a lot of things, Darla. The question is, how much do you know? I don't know what you mean. I think you do. We stared at each other across my kitchen table. Finally, Darla looked away. Marcy made me promise not to say anything. About what? About Tyler. There it was. Confirmation from the horse's mouth. How long have you known? A few months. She needed someone to talk to, and with you working so much. So this is my fault? No, that's not what I meant. It's just, she felt lonely. Disconnected. Lonely enough to steal money from our joint account? Disconnected enough to lie to our daughters? Darla stood up abruptly. I should go check on the kids. Sit down, Darla. Something in my voice made her freeze. She sat back down. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. You're going to tell me everything you know about Marcy and Tyler. When it started, where they meet, who else knows about it. Everything. I can't betray my sister like that. Your sister betrayed her family. You're just choosing which side you want to be on when this all comes out. Darla was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. It started about 4 months ago. Tyler was doing some kind of wellness workshop at the boutique. Marcy said he made her feel alive again, like she mattered. Where do they meet? Usually at the lake house, sometimes at his cabin. Who else knows? Jenna knows. She's been covering for Marcy, telling people they're at yoga retreats together. Jenna, Marcy's best friend since high school, a woman I'd considered family for 20 years. Another betrayal to add to the list. Anyone else? I don't think so. Marcy's been really careful. Not careful enough. I finished my coffee and stood up. Darla, I want you and your family out of my house by tomorrow night. Eddie, please. I have nowhere else to go. You should have thought about that before you decided to help my wife destroy our marriage. It's not like that. She loves you. She's just confused. I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. She loves me so much she's been stealing money to spend on another man. She loves me so much she brought you here to provide an alibi for her affair. She made a mistake. No, Darla, she made a choice, multiple choices. Every day for 4 months, she chose to lie to me and our daughters. Every time she withdrew money from our account, every time she drove to the lake house to meet Tyler, every time she looked me in the eye and lied about where she'd been, those were all choices. I headed for the door, then turned back. 24 hours, Darla. After that, I start changing locks. I spent the day driving around town, thinking and planning. I stopped by the boutique around noon and peered through the window. It was closed, with a handwritten sign saying, "Gone to find myself. Back soon," with a little heart drawn next to it. Cute. I drove by Tyler's cabin next. The Jeep was there, along with a motorcycle I didn't recognize. I parked down the road and walked back, staying in the tree line. Through the window, I could see Tyler and another man working out in the living room. The other guy was younger, maybe early 20s, with the same carefully sculpted look as Tyler. I took photos with my phone, documenting everything. The license plates, the cabin address, the faces. If this was going to be a war, I needed intelligence. That evening, I met Frank at Murphy's again. This time, I brought printouts of the bank statements and credit card bills. Jesus, Eddie. Frank whistled low as he looked through the papers. She really went all out. $8,000 in cash withdrawals, $12,000 on the credit card, all while telling me we needed to tighten our belts because the boutique was struggling. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure she regrets every single choice she made. Frank looked up from the papers. That sounds ominous. Good. Eddie, I've known you for 25 years. You're not a vindictive guy. Don't let this turn you into someone you're not. Maybe vindictive is exactly what I need to be. Maybe being the nice guy, the understanding husband, the man who always tries to work things out. Maybe that's what got me here in the first place. Or maybe fighting fire with fire just burns everything down. I took the papers back and folded them, carefully. Frank, some things deserve to burn. When I got home, Sylvia was waiting for me in the garage. She was sitting on my workbench again, but this time she looked upset. Dad, we need to talk. What's wrong? Darla told me and Beck that you're kicking her out. She's crying and saying you're being cruel and unreasonable. I sat down on my tool chest and looked at my younger daughter. Sylvia had always been the peacemaker in our family, the one who tried to smooth over conflicts and find middle ground. Syl, there are some things happening that you don't understand yet. Then explain them to me. I'm 19, not 9. I can handle the truth. I thought about Beck's reaction the night before, how she'd taken the news about Marcy's affair with surprising composure. Maybe it was time to stop protecting my daughters from the reality of their mother's choices. Your mother is having an affair. Sylvia's face went through several emotions: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, a kind of resigned sadness. With Tyler? You knew? I suspected. She's been different lately, and he's always around the boutique. Plus, she bought new perfume and started working out every day. Sylvia shrugged. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were all there. Darla knew about it. She's been helping your mother cover it up. That's why you want her gone. That's why I want her gone. Sylvia was quiet for a moment, then looked up at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than 19. What are you going to do about Mom? I don't know yet, but whatever I do, it's going to get messy. Are you and Beck going to be okay with that? Dad, you've been there for us our entire lives. You taught us right from wrong, how to stand up for ourselves, how to fight for what matters. If Mom chose to throw that away for some Instagram wellness coach, that's on her. Even if what I do hurts her, she hurt us first. She hurt you first. Sylvia's voice was steady, but I could see tears in her eyes. Besides, Beck and I talked about it. We're on your side, no matter what. That night, after Darla and her family had packed their belongings and left with wounded dignity and plenty of dramatic sobbing, I sat in my office and made a list. Everything I knew about Tyler Green. Everything I knew about Marcy's schedule and habits. Everyone who had been complicit in the deception. Then I made another list. Everything they cared about. Their reputations, their businesses, their social standing in our small town. And finally, I made a third list. Everything they had that I could take away. By the time I went to bed, I had the beginnings of a plan. It wasn't nice, and it wasn't forgiving, and it definitely wasn't the kind of thing the old Eddie Barrett would have done. But the old Eddie Barrett was gone. He died the moment I found those bank statements and credit card bills. He'd been buried the moment Darla confirmed what I already knew. The man who was left behind was someone harder, someone colder, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to win a war is to be willing to burn everything down. And I was very much ready to burn everything down. The anonymous text arrived at 6 a.m. Stop digging or you'll regret it. T. I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading Tyler's Instagram feed, learning everything I could about his routines and habits. The text made me laugh out loud. Cute, I said to my empty kitchen. Now it's my turn. I screenshot the message and sent it to Beck with a note. Your mom's boyfriend thinks he can intimidate me. Her response came back immediately. Want me to show you how to hack his social media accounts? My daughter, the psychology major, apparently had hidden talents. Not yet, I texted back, but keep that in your back pocket. I had bigger plans for Tyler Green than digital harassment. The first step was intelligence gathering. I spent the morning following Tyler's routine, staying far enough back to avoid detection, but close enough to document everything. He started his day with a run along the lake path at 7 a.m., always the same route, always wearing those ridiculous designer workout clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. After his run, he stopped at the organic coffee shop downtown, where he flirted shamelessly with the young barista while ordering some complicated drink that took 5 minutes to make. Then he drove to the gym, where he spent 2 hours lifting weights and taking selfies in the mirror. The man was nothing if not predictable. At noon, he met Marcy at the lake house. I watched from my hiding spot in the trees as they embraced on the front porch like lovers in a movie. The sight should have made me angry, but instead I felt that cold calculation spreading through my chest again. Let them have their moment. It was going to be their last. That afternoon, I drove to the hardware store and bought supplies. Nothing dramatic, just some basic items that any home renovator might need. Sugar, which I definitely needed for the coffee I wasn't drinking. Motor oil, which my vans certainly required. Spray paint, for the project I was definitely working on. The kid behind the counter didn't ask any questions. Why would he? I'd been shopping there for 20 years. I waited until 2 a.m. to make my first move. Tyler's Jeep was parked in the driveway of his cabin, and the house was dark. I'd spent enough time watching his routine to know he was a heavy sleeper who went to bed early and woke up early. The sugar went into his gas tank. The motor oil went under his engine, creating a nice puddle that would suggest a serious leak. And the spray paint, bright red, impossible to ignore, went across his windshield in letters large enough to read from space. Home wrecker. I was back home and in bed by 3 a.m., sleeping better than I had in months. The next morning, I positioned myself at the coffee shop with a clear view of the road that led from Tyler's cabin. I didn't have to wait long. Tyler's Jeep came limping down the street at about 15 miles per hour. Engine making sounds like a dying animal, red paint blazing across the windshield. He pulled into the gas station across from the coffee shop, and I had a perfect view of his meltdown. First came the cursing, loud enough that people across the street turned to look. Then came the phone calls. I could see him gesturing wildly as he talked to what I assumed was his insurance company. Then a tow truck. Then probably Marcy. Finally came the moment I'd been waiting for. Tyler got out of his Jeep and kicked the front tire, hard enough that he immediately started hopping around on one foot, clutching his toes and screaming obscenities. I took photos of the entire performance and posted them anonymously to the town's Facebook group, with the caption, "When keeping it real goes wrong. Namaste Wellness Coach, #Namaste." Within an hour, the post had 50 comments and twice as many shares. Our little town didn't get much entertainment, and Tyler's public tantrum was the most exciting thing to happen since the mayor got caught embezzling from the Christmas fund. My phone rang while I was driving home. Marcy's name on the caller ID. "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, making my voice as pleasant as possible. "Eddie, where are you?" "Just finished a job. Why?" "Someone vandalized Tyler's car last night. It's terrible." "Tyler? The wellness coach from your boutique?" "Yes. Someone put sugar in his gas tank and spray painted his windshield. The police think it might be random vandalism, but Tyler thinks someone targeted him specifically." "Why would anyone target him?" There was a pause. "I don't know. He's such a good person. He helps people find their authentic selves."
Sounds like a real saint. I hope they catch whoever did it.
"The police are asking if anyone has security cameras in the area. Tyler's really upset."
I bet he is.
"Must be expensive to fix that kind of damage." "Eddie, you sound strange. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Marcy. Just tired. Long day." "Okay, I'll be home late tonight. I'm helping Tyler deal with the insurance paperwork." "Of course you are. See you later." I hung up and smiled. Round one to me. But Tyler wasn't done. That evening, while I was having dinner with Beck and Sylvia, my phone buzzed with another text from the same unknown number. "I know it was you. Back off or things get ugly." I showed the text to my daughters. "He's not very bright, is he?" Beck observed. "Threatening you over text message creates evidence." "Should we be worried about him?" Sylvia asked. "Tyler Green?" I laughed. "The man who just had a public meltdown because someone put sugar in his gas tank? I'm not worried." "What's your next move?" Beck asked. I looked at my daughters, my brilliant, loyal, fierce daughters who had chosen to stand with me instead of their cheating mother. They deserved to know what they were signing up for. "I'm going to destroy him," I said simply. "And then I'm going to destroy everyone who helped him destroy our family." "How?" Sylvia asked. "By giving them exactly what they deserve. Public humiliation, financial ruin, and the complete collapse of everything they care about." Beck grinned. "Can we help?" And that's when I knew I wasn't fighting this war alone anymore. We spent the evening planning. Beck, it turned out, had been researching Tyler ever since she suspected he was involved with Marcy. Her psychology training had taught her how to analyze behavioral patterns and identify weaknesses. "He's a classic narcissist," she explained, spreading printouts of his social media posts across the kitchen table. "Everything he does is about image and validation. He posts gym selfies every day, brags about his transformation coaching business, claims to have certifications he doesn't actually have." "What kind of certifications?" I asked. "He says he's a licensed therapist and nutritionist. I checked with the state licensing boards. He's neither." "That's fraud," Sylvia said. "It's also his weakness," Beck continued. "His entire business is built on lies. All we have to do is expose them." "What about his relationship with Mom?" Sylvia asked. "How do we handle that?" I thought about the credit card bills, the cash withdrawals, the months of systematic deception. "We let your mother make her own choices," I said finally, "but we make sure she understands the consequences." "Meaning?" "Meaning, she can have Tyler Green if she wants him, but she can't have Tyler Green, and our family, and our money, and our respect. She has to choose." Beck nodded approvingly. "Force her to face reality instead of living in this fantasy where she can have everything." "Exactly." We worked until midnight, developing what Beck called our psychological warfare strategy. It was comprehensive, methodical, and absolutely ruthless. Tyler would be first. We'd expose his fake credentials, document his predatory behavior with married women, and destroy his reputation in the wellness community. Beck had already found 3 other women in town who'd been coached by Tyler, and she suspected at least one of them had been more than a client. Marcy would be next. We'd force her to choose between her family and her fantasy, but we'd make sure the choice came with real consequences. No more access to our joint accounts, no more using the lake house for her affairs, no more pretending she could have both lives. And finally, we'd deal with the enablers. Jenna, who'd been covering for Marcy, Darla, who'd helped provide alibis, anyone who'd known about the affair and chosen to help hide it instead of protecting our family. This is going to get messy, I warned my daughters. Good, Sylvia said. Maybe it's time things got messy around here. Are you sure you want to be involved in this? It's going to change how people see you, how they see our family. Beck looked at me with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Dad, they already changed how people see our family the moment Mom decided to cheat. We're just deciding whether we're going to be victims or fighters. Fighters, Sylvia agreed. Definitely fighters. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about the man I used to be. The man who would have tried to work things out, who would have gone to marriage counseling and asked what he could do differently. The man who would have forgiven and forgotten and tried to rebuild trust. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that some betrayals can't be forgiven, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some people only understand consequences when those consequences hit them where it hurts most. Tomorrow, Tyler Green was going to learn that threatening the wrong man's family was the biggest mistake of his life. And Marcy was going to learn that 20 years of marriage meant nothing if she was willing to throw it away for a fraud in designer workout clothes. The war was just beginning, and I intended to win. The next phase of our campaign began at dawn. While Tyler was dealing with his vandalized Jeep and trying to explain to his insurance company why someone had spray-painted "Home Wrecker" across his windshield, Beck was putting her psychology training to work. She'd created fake social media accounts and was systematically contacting Tyler's clients, posing as someone interested in his services. Within 2 hours, she documented a dozen instances of Tyler claiming credentials he didn't have, promising results he couldn't deliver, and charging premium prices for generic advice he'd probably copied from self-help websites. "Dad, you need to see this," she called from her laptop at the kitchen table. I looked over her shoulder at a screenshot of Tyler's website. Under qualifications, he listed a master's degree in psychology from a university that didn't exist, certification from a nutrition board that had never heard of him, and training in advanced wellness techniques from an organization that turned out to be a company he'd registered himself. "How did you verify all this so quickly?" "I called them. Turns out it's pretty easy to check credentials when you know where to look," Beck grinned. "Want to see the best part?" She pulled up another screen, showing Tyler's business license. He'd registered as a wellness and life transformation coach, but was advertising services that required actual medical and psychological licenses. That's illegal, isn't it? Very illegal. He could face fines, lawsuits, and criminal charges if the right people found out. What kind of right people? The state attorney general's office, for starters. They take unlicensed practice very seriously. I thought about this for a moment. "Beck, I want you to document everything you've found. Screenshots, phone records, copies of his advertisements. Make it bulletproof." "Already on it." "But Dad, there's something else." She pulled up Tyler's Instagram account and scrolled to a photo from 3 weeks ago. Tyler was shirtless at the gym, flexing for the camera. But that wasn't what Beck wanted me to see. Look at the background. Behind Tyler, barely visible in the mirror, was another person. A woman with dark hair wearing a pink shirt I recognized. Is that Mom? 3 weeks ago, when she told us she was at a day spa with Jenna, the cold feeling in my chest spread a little further. It was one thing to know about the affair intellectually. It was another to see photographic evidence of the lies. "There's more," Beck continued, scrolling through more posts. "He's been documenting their relationship without realizing it. Look." She showed me a series of photos from the past 2 months. Tyler at restaurants I knew Marcy had been to, Tyler at locations that matched the charges on our credit card statement, Tyler wearing a watch that looked suspiciously like the one that had disappeared from my dresser last month. He's been posting evidence of his affair on social media. Narcissists can't help themselves. They have to document everything, even when it's incriminating. Sylvia walked into the kitchen already dressed for her morning classes. "How's the investigation going? Your sister just proved that Mom's boyfriend is a fraud and an idiot. Perfect combination, Sylvia said, pouring herself coffee. What's the next step? Beck closed her laptop and looked at both of us. We go public. That afternoon, while Tyler was presumably getting his Jeep repaired and Marcy was presumably at the boutique that was never actually open, I made a series of phone calls. The first was to the state attorney general's office. I spoke to a very interested investigator who took detailed notes about Tyler's unlicensed practice and fraudulent advertising. The second was to the local newspaper. The editor, a woman I'd gone to high school with, was very curious about a story involving fake credentials and potential fraud in the wellness industry. The third was to 3 of Tyler's former clients that Beck had identified. 2 of them were eager to talk about their negative experiences with his coaching. The third, a recently divorced woman in her 40s, had a story that made my jaw clench. He told me I needed to embrace my authentic self, she said during our phone conversation. Said my ex-husband was holding me back from my true potential. Charged me $3,000 for intensive transformation sessions that were basically just him trying to sleep with me. Did you report this to anyone? Who would I report it to? He's not a licensed therapist, so there's no professional board to complain to. I just felt stupid for falling for it. Would you be willing to talk to a newspaper reporter about your experience? There was a long pause. Would it help other women avoid the same thing? It might. Then yes, I'll talk. By evening, I had statements from 5 of Tyler's former clients, documentation of his fraudulent credentials, and a newspaper reporter who was very interested in writing an exposé about unlicensed wellness coaches preying on vulnerable people. But I wasn't done yet. That night, I drove to Murphy's Tavern for what I knew would be my last friendly conversation with some old friends. Word travels fast in a small town, and I suspected that by tomorrow I'd be persona non grata with anyone who thought I should have handled my wife's affair more quietly. Frank was there, along with Mike Chen and Dave Rodriguez, guys I'd known since high school, men who'd been to my wedding and my daughter's birthday parties. Eddie, Mike called out as I approached their table. Heard you've been having some excitement lately. What kind of excitement? Someone vandalized that wellness coach's car. Tyler something. Spray-painted home wrecker right across his windshield. Dave laughed. Whoever did it has balls. I'll give them that. Any idea who might have done it? I asked, sitting down with my beer. Could be anyone, Frank said carefully. Guy's been making enemies around town. What kind of enemies? Mike leaned forward. Word is he's been a little too friendly with some of his married clients. Wives looking for meaning, husbands getting suspicious.
Anyone specific?
The 3 men exchanged glances. Finally, Dave spoke up. Eddie, we need to talk to you about something. Here it comes, I thought. The intervention. The we're worried about you conversation. The suggestion that I handle this like a civilized person instead of a man whose family had been systematically destroyed. Talk away. We know about Marcy and Tyler. I took a sip of my beer and waited. We've known for weeks, Mike continued. Saw them together at that restaurant in Grand Rapids. Figured it wasn't our place to say anything. But now things are getting ugly, Dave added. Tyler's been asking around about you, trying to find out where you work, what your schedule is like. Sounds like he's planning something stupid, Frank said. I looked at my 3 oldest friends, men I'd trusted for decades, and felt something shift inside me. How long have you known? About a month, Mike admitted. And you didn't think to tell me? We hoped it would burn out on its own. These things usually do. These things? Affairs, Dave said. Midlife crisis stuff. Marcy's always been a little dramatic. We figured she'd come to her senses. I finished my beer and stood up. So you decided to let me look like a fool for another month while my wife spent our money on her boyfriend and lied to our daughters about where she was going. Eddie, that's exactly what you did. You protected her feelings and his reputation at the expense of my family. We were trying to protect you too, Frank said. We didn't want to see you get hurt. Too late for that. I threw a 20 on the table and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Mike call out, Eddie, don't do anything stupid. I turned back to look at them, these men who'd been my friends for 25 years, who'd chosen to protect my wife's secret instead of my family's honor. Stupid would have been trusting you to have my back when it mattered. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern knowing I'd never walk back in as the same person. Another bridge burned, Another relationship sacrificed on the altar of Marcy's selfish choices, but I wasn't done burning bridges yet. The next morning, the newspaper article went live online. Local wellness coach under investigation for fraudulent credentials was the headline, with a photo of Tyler looking ridiculous in one of his gym selfies. The article was thorough and damning. It detailed Tyler's fake qualifications, quoted his former clients about his predatory behavior, and included a statement from the Attorney General's office about their ongoing investigation. Within an hour, Tyler's social media accounts were flooded with angry comments from former clients, current clients demanding refunds, and local residents expressing outrage about being deceived. By noon, his business website was down. By evening, he was trending on local social media as #FakeWellnessCoach. My phone rang at 8 p.m. Tyler's number. "You son of a bitch," he said without preamble. "Hello, Tyler. How's business?" "You destroyed my life." "I documented your lies."
There's a difference.
"I know it was you who vandalized my car." "Prove it." "I know it was you who called the Attorney General." "Prove that too." There was a long pause. "This isn't over." "You're right, it's not. Because tomorrow I'm going to destroy your girlfriend too." I hung up and smiled. Tyler Green was finished, but Marcy's reckoning was just beginning, and this time I wasn't going to be merciful. The call came at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning. Marcy sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Eddie, please. We need to talk." "About what?" "About Tyler. About everything. The newspaper article? His business is ruined. People are saying terrible things. Are the things they're saying true? That's not the point. Someone targeted him deliberately. Someone who knew about us." I sat up in bed and looked out the window. It was going to be a beautiful day for a family gathering. "Marcy, I think it's time we had a conversation. All of us. As a family." "What do you mean?" "I mean you, me, Beck, and Sylvia. Tonight. At the lake house." There was a long pause. "Why the lake house?" "Because that's where this all started, isn't it? Seems appropriate that it's where it ends." "Eddie, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." I hung up and called my daughters. It was time for the final act. Beck and Sylvia arrived at the lake house at sunset, bringing groceries for what they thought was going to be a family dinner. They found me on the dock, setting up a projector and laptop. "Dad, what's all this for?" Sylvia asked. "A presentation." "What kind of presentation?" "The kind that ends with your mother making a choice." Beck sat down beside me on the dock. "Are you sure you want to do this? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment your mother chose Tyler over our family. I'm just making sure everyone understands what that choice actually cost." Marcy arrived 20 minutes later, driving the BMW that I now knew had been financed with our stolen money. She looked terrible, pale, exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "Eddie, thank you for agreeing to talk." "Sit down, Marcy." She sat in one of the chairs I'd arranged facing the projector screen. Beck and Sylvia flanked her, and I stood behind the laptop. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to make something clear. Everything I'm about to show you is documented fact. Bank records, credit card statements, photographs, text messages. If you want to deny any of it, you're welcome to try." "What are you talking about?" I clicked the first slide. Our joint bank account statement appeared on the screen, with the cash withdrawals highlighted in red. $8,000 in cash withdrawals over the past 4 months. All on days when you told us you were working at the boutique. Marcy's face went white. "Eddie, I can explain." Next slide. The credit card statement appeared, showing charges at hotels, restaurants, and jewelry stores. $12,000 in charges, including a weekend at the Grand Rapids Marriott that coincided with your wellness retreat with Jenna. How did you... Next slide. Photos from Tyler's Instagram account filled the screen. Images of him at restaurants, wearing my watch, with Marcy visible in the background of several shots. Your boyfriend documented your entire affair on social media. He's even wearing the watch you stole from my dresser. Sylvia gasped. Mom, is that Dad's watch? Marcy was crying now, but I wasn't finished. Next slide. Text messages appeared on the screen. Conversations between Marcy and Tyler discussing their plans, their feelings for each other, and their contempt for the boring life she was living with me. I particularly enjoyed the one where you called me emotionally unavailable and said Tyler made you feel alive for the first time in years. Stop, Marcy whispered. Please stop. Next slide. Photos of the lake house appeared, taken from inside the bedroom. Marcy and Tyler in various states of undress, obviously unaware they were being photographed. Tyler set up a camera to record your sessions. I found the files on a cloud storage account he was careless enough to leave logged in on the lake house computer. Beck stood up abruptly. Dad, that's enough. We don't need to see this. But Sylvia remained seated staring at the screen with an expression of cold fury I'd never seen on her face before. No, she said quietly. Let him finish. I want to see everything. Final slide. A document appeared on the screen. Legal paperwork I'd had drawn up that morning. Divorce papers, already filed. You have 30 days to respond. Marcy looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. Eddie, please. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt you with the girls. But you did hurt us. Every single day for 4 months you chose to hurt us. I was confused, unhappy. Tyler made you feel like stealing money from our joint account? Tyler made you feel like lying to our daughters about where you were going? Tyler made you feel like bringing your sister into our home to provide cover for your affair? It wasn't like that. Beck sat back down and looked at her mother with disgust. Then what was it like, Mom? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you decided your happiness was more important than our family. I still love your father. I still love you girls. No, Sylvia said, her voice steady and cold. You love the idea of us. You love having a family to come home to when your fantasy life gets complicated. But you don't love us enough to choose us over Tyler. That's not true. Prove it, I said. What? Prove it. Choose us over Tyler. Right now. Marcy looked around at the three of us, her family, the people who'd loved and supported her for 20 years. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You can have Tyler Green or you can have us, but you can't have both. Eddie, please don't make me choose. You already chose Marcy 4 months ago when you decided to start this affair. 3 months ago when you started stealing our money to fund it. 2 months ago when you brought Darla into our home to provide alibis. You've been choosing Tyler over us every single day. I made mistakes. You made choices, and choices have consequences. I closed the laptop and looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, for what I knew would be the last time as her husband. The lake house is in your name. You can keep it, but I've changed the locks on our house and closed our joint accounts. If you want to be with Tyler, you're free to do that. But you're going to do it without our money and without our support. What about the girls? Beck and Sylvia exchanged a glance. Then Beck spoke for both of them. We're adults, Mom. We can choose who we want to live with and who we want to have in our lives. And we choose Dad. Marcy broke down completely then, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, promising to end things with Tyler and go to counseling and do whatever it took to save our marriage. But it was too late for that. Some betrayals are too deep, some lies too extensive, some choices too final to be undone by tears and promises. I helped my daughters pack up the projector and laptop, while Marcy sat in her chair, staring out at the lake where she'd conducted her affair, trying to process the complete destruction of the life she'd taken for granted. As we loaded everything into my van, Tyler's Jeep came speeding up the driveway. He jumped out and ran toward us, his face twisted with rage. "You son of a bitch!" he shouted, charging at me. "You destroyed everything!" I stepped aside and let him run past me, straight into Beck's fist. My daughter, who'd played soccer for 12 years and had a mean right hook, caught him square in the nose. Tyler went down hard, blood streaming from his face. "That's for my family," Beck said calmly, shaking out her hand. Tyler tried to get up, but Sylvia stepped forward. "Stay down," she advised. "Unless you want to find out what I learned in my self-defense class." Tyler looked around at the three of us, a middle-aged plumber and his two college-age daughters, and apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. He scrambled back to his Jeep and drove away, leaving Marcy alone at the lake house with the ruins of her double life. As we drove home, Beck rubbed her knuckles and grinned at me. "Dad, I have to say, this is the most fun I've had in months. Violence isn't the answer to everything," I said, but I was grinning too. "Maybe not," Sylvia said from the back seat, "but it felt pretty good." We drove home in comfortable silence. Three people who'd been through hell together and come out stronger on the other side. Behind us, the lake house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, along with the life we'd once known. Ahead of us was something new, something built on truth instead of lies, on loyalty instead of betrayal, on the kind of love that doesn't require deception to survive. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I married Marcy 20 years ago, but it was the ending we deserved. 3 days after the lake house confrontation, Tyler made his final mistake. He showed up at my house at 7 a.m., pounding on the front door like a madman. I was having coffee with Beck and Sylvia, planning our day, when the pounding started. "Eddie Barrett, get out here, you coward!" I looked at my daughters. "Stay inside." "Dad, maybe we should call the police," Sylvia said. "Not yet. Let me handle this first." I opened the front door to find Tyler standing on my porch, unshaven and wild-eyed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You destroyed my life," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. My business is ruined. My reputation is gone. Marcy won't even take my calls. Sounds like consequences. You think you're so smart, don't you? The righteous husband protecting his family." Tyler stepped closer and I could smell alcohol on his breath. "But you're just a pathetic loser who couldn't keep his wife satisfied. Is that what you came here to tell me? That you're better in bed than I am? Because I have to say, Tyler, that's not much of a victory when the woman you're sleeping with is stealing money to pay for your dates." "She loves me. She loved the fantasy of you, the excitement, the danger, the feeling of being special. But when it came down to choosing between you and her family, what did she choose?" Tyler's face twisted with rage. "She chose you because you threatened her. You manipulated her. I gave her facts, bank statements, credit card bills, photographs. If the truth felt like manipulation, that says more about you than it does about me. This isn't over." "Yes, Tyler, it is." I started to close the door, but Tyler grabbed it and shoved his way inside. "I said this isn't over." That was his mistake. The moment Tyler entered my house uninvited, everything changed. Beck appeared in the hallway behind me, her phone in her hand. "Dad, I'm calling 911. "Wait," I said, not taking my eyes off Tyler. "Let's give Mr. Green a chance to leave voluntarily." "I'm not going anywhere until you admit what you did." "What exactly do you think I did?" "You sabotaged my car. You called the Attorney General. You fed lies to that reporter. I documented your fraudulent business practices and shared that information with the appropriate authorities. If that destroyed your life, maybe you should have thought about that before you started lying to people." Tyler pulled out his phone and started recording. "I want you to admit it, on camera. Admit that you vandalized my car." I looked directly into his phone camera and smiled. "Tyler Green, you are trespassing in my home. You are intoxicated, you are making threats, and you are harassing my family. I am asking you to leave immediately." "Not until you admit—" "Dad, get away from him," Sylvia called from the kitchen. "He's got something in his hand." I looked down and saw Tyler holding a tire iron, partially concealed behind his leg. "Really, Tyler? You brought a weapon to threaten me in front of my daughters? You destroyed everything I cared about. Now I'm going to return the favor." He raised the tire iron, and I did what any father would do when a dangerous man threatens his family in his own home. I hit him. 20 years of swinging hammers and lifting heavy equipment had given me hands like sledgehammers. Tyler went down like a sack of potatoes, the tire iron clattering across my hardwood floor. "Beck, call the police now," I said, standing over Tyler's unconscious form. "Already dialing." "Sylvia, get the camera and record everything. I want documentation of the weapon, his condition, everything he said." My daughters moved with calm efficiency, and I realized that this moment, this final confrontation, was exactly what we'd been building towards since the day I found those bank statements. Tyler groaned and tried to sit up, blood trickling from his nose where my fist had connected. "You broke my nose," he mumbled. "You brought a weapon into my home and threatened my family. You're lucky that's all I broke." The police arrived within 5 minutes. 2 officers I recognized from around town, men who knew me as a reliable contractor and tax-paying citizen. "Eddie, what happened here?" Officer Johnson asked. "This man forced his way into my home, made threats against my family, and attacked me with a tire iron. My daughters witnessed everything, and we have it recorded on video." Tyler tried to stand up, but Officer Martinez gently pushed him back down. "Sir, you need to stay seated until the paramedics check you out." "He attacked me. I want to press charges." "You attacked him," Beck said, holding up her phone. "I have the whole thing on video. You forced your way into our house, threatened my father, and pulled out a weapon." Officer Johnson looked at the tire iron, then at Tyler's bloody face, then at me. "Eddie, do you want to press charges?" I thought about it for a moment. Tyler was finished, his business destroyed, his reputation ruined, his relationship with Marcy over. He was a broken man who'd made a series of catastrophically bad decisions and was now facing the consequences. "Yes," I said. "Breaking and entering, assault with a weapon, terroristic threats. I want the full charges." "You can't do this to me," Tyler pleaded as Officer Martinez handcuffed him. "I lost everything because of you. You lost everything because of your own choices. The fake credentials, the affair, the lies, those were all your decisions. I just made sure people knew the truth." As they loaded Tyler into the police car, my phone rang. Marcy's number. "Eddie, I just heard about Tyler. Is everyone okay?" "We're fine. Your boyfriend is going to jail. He's not my boyfriend anymore. I ended things with him yesterday." "Good for you." "Eddie, I know I don't have the right to ask, but is there any chance we could try to work things out? I know I made terrible mistakes, but we have 20 years together." "That has to count for something." I looked at my daughters, who were giving their statements to the police. Beck had a bruise on her knuckles from punching Tyler at the lake house. Sylvia was calmly explaining to Officer Johnson how Tyler had threatened our family and forced his way into our home. These 2 amazing young women had chosen to stand with me when their mother's choices tore our family apart. They'd helped me fight back against the people who tried to destroy us. They'd shown more loyalty and courage in the past week than their mother had shown in 20 years of marriage. Marcy, those 20 years ended the moment you chose Tyler over our family. What we have now is a legal process to finalize the divorce and figure out custody arrangements for the girls. They're adults. There won't be custody arrangements. Exactly. They're adults and they've made their choice, just like you made yours. I hung up and walked over to where my daughters were finishing their statements. "How are you 2 holding up?" "Better than Tyler," Beck said, grinning. "Dad, I'm proud of you," Sylvia said. "You could have let Mom get away with the affair, let Tyler keep running his fake business, let everyone pretend nothing happened. But you fought back." "We fought back," I corrected. "This was a team effort." Officer Johnson approached us as the police car with Tyler drove away. "Eddie, the prosecutor will probably want to talk to you about pressing charges. With the video evidence and the weapon, this should be a pretty straightforward case. What kind of sentence is he looking at? Breaking and entering, assault with a weapon, terroristic threats? Probably 2 to 5 years, depending on his record." I nodded. Tyler Green had come into my life as a homewrecker and a fraud. He was leaving it as a convicted felon. There was a certain poetic justice in that. That evening, the 3 of us sat on our back porch, watching the sunset and processing everything that had happened. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "So what happens now?" Sylvia asked. "Now we rebuild," I said. "We figure out what our family looks like without your mother. We heal from the damage that was done. We move forward." "Are you going to be okay, Dad, with the divorce and everything?" I thought about that question. A week ago, I would have said no. A week ago, I was a man whose wife was stealing money to fund her affair, whose friends knew about his humiliation and chose to stay silent, whose family was being systematically destroyed by people he'd trusted. But that man was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone who understood that respect isn't given freely. It's earned and defended. Someone who knew that loyalty is a choice, and the people who choose to stand with you when things get ugly are the only ones who matter. Yeah, I said, looking at my daughters, my real family, the people who'd chosen to fight beside me instead of against me. I'm going to be just fine. 3 months later, Tyler Green was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. His wellness business was permanently shut down, and the Attorney General's office recovered nearly $50,000 in fraudulent charges from his former clients. Marcy moved into the lake house permanently and tried to start over, but small towns have long memories. Her boutique closed within a month, and she eventually moved to another state to escape the gossip and judgment. Beck finished her psychology degree and was accepted into graduate school. Sylvia transferred to a 4-year university and decided to major in business law, inspired by our experience with Tyler's fraudulent practices. And I learned that sometimes the only way to save your family is to be willing to destroy everything else. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in November. I walked out of the courthouse a free man with full custody of the house, the business, and most importantly, the respect and love of my daughters. That evening, we had dinner at Murphy's Tavern, the first time I had been back since my confrontation with my former friends. Frank was there, along with Mike and Dave. They nodded awkwardly when I walked in, but didn't approach our table. "Do you miss them?" Beck asked, noticing the tension. "I miss who I thought they were," I said, "but I don't miss people who would choose to protect a lie over defending the truth." "Their loss," Sylvia said, raising her glass of soda in a toast. "To the Barrett family, smaller now, but stronger." "To the Barrett family," Beck agreed. "To the Barrett family," I said, clinking my glass against theirs, and to learning that sometimes the best way to save something is to let everything else burn. Outside, the first snow of winter was beginning to fall, covering the town in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. Inside Murphy's Tavern, 3 people who'd been through hell together sat around a table planning their future and celebrating their victory. It wasn't the ending I'd expected when I married Marcy 20 years ago, but it was the ending we deserved, honest, hard-won, and built on the kind of loyalty that doesn't require lies to survive.